All right, thank you everyone for joining today. Just give a couple seconds for everyone to connect, get used to the technology to join, but we'll kick off in a couple seconds here. For those that are joining as well, please feel free to keep your eye on the chat. We will be posting a couple links there today. And also as well, we have the Q&A open. If you do want to post anything, post questions during the session, I'll try to answer them in flight. If not, we'll take them away and get back to you like we always do. All right, so thank you. I can see everyone is joining now. So welcome to today's session. This is something where we've spent a lot of time talking amongst our peers, research. There's been some fantastic articles. It's very on trend at the moment in the spectrum of politics in Australia, but from spend to sustainability. So what we really want to drive into today is starting to look at the real cost of cloud. So as everybody knows on this call, the explosion of data centers across the world, even particularly here in our own backyards across APAC. But this is driving a demand on consuming vast amounts of water, electricity, and carbon. So today we're going to walk through that and what that means, and obviously then how Flexera can help support those particular challenges or mandates within your organizations. I just want to start today looking back. So as part of this webinar series, we've already completed the 3 that you see on the screen in front of you. And all of these are still available on demand. So Ash is going to post those links in the chat. So if you haven't had the opportunity to view those, there's very short segments like today. So that's 25 to 30 minutes, so bite-sized chunks. You get to listen to me again, which is even better. But Shadow SaaS, compliance frameworks, and beyond visibility. So 3 fantastic sessions we've run to date. Today sees us shift our focus into this topic, so sustainability. So what we're going to do is drive into some of the local impacts and research around that, understand how we can look at driving carbon emissions out when we're making decisions about IT and cloud spend. Looking ahead, just before the Christmas break for most of us, or maybe on your Christmas break, you can still come and join me and talk about mastering SaaS. So we're going to deep dive into our Salesforce and ServiceNow licensing. And to kick off the new year with a bang, we're looking at 4 ways to optimize ITAM. So that'll be around the 15th of January. So the registration page is up now in the chat as well. So if you want to get the notifications about those, please subscribe to those and join us in December and January. All right, so as we look today, like we kick off all of these sessions, it's really about where we want to focus the topic. And today is part of the Flexera One platform. You can see we're looking at a subsection really of this. And what I'll do is really we want to talk through where that sort of interacts with their complete platform. But what I wanted to do is visualize today that we're really talking today about 2 capabilities within the platform. For those that are familiar with the IT visibility capability, we spoke a little bit about that during the compliance framework session. There is sustainability there as well as part of the end user compute data center type endpoints. But today, most of the focus will be on the cloud cost optimization side. And we have a component there, a capability called cloud sustainability. So our goal is really to talk about these holistically. Look at the end-to-end sustainability of IT and that technology, greenness, I suppose, rather than spend and risk in this case. But we really want to drive a visibility view, looking at the carbon risk, so to speak, in terms of how do we drive a better, greener future using IT as the vehicle to do that. Now, one of the things today, and for those that have looked at the IT priorities report for 2026, this has just been released in the last couple of weeks. A fantastic report to see what your peers doing in the industry and how they think about a lot of these spend and risk challenges. One of the key things here for me was that 94% of those IT decision makers say that sustainability was an increasing priority for them within IT, which is fantastic. It's good to have the lens on being greener, making more sensible choices. Now, the flip side of that is 79% of them actually thought that they had easy access to sustainability data today. But conversely to that, 87% believe that their organization needs to improve IT sustainability. So what we want to do is that significant gap between sort of the ambition of an organization and the execution of that. So what we want to do today is demonstrate how we can actually prove IT is green. And I know a lot of the government websites that we have in this region, a lot of organizations are really focused on promoting their ESG, their green plans. I think if you look at your own websites and your own organizations, you'll have that place within your website that talks about your organization's plans around that. Today is all about how we prove that IT is green and using data, using facts. So the last number on here, around 14%, believe that it's an emerging priority for them as part of the top priorities for next year. It's a fairly new entrant in for 2026. So obviously AI and cost and security at the top of that list, but sustainability is growing in importance, which is a significant thing for us. Now, when we look at sustainability and the practices around that, one of the key things that we often focus a lot of time and attention on is the carbon emissions and electricity. So really, the other thing is to think about is what is the hidden cost of this? We all adopted public cloud. There's the sharing resources. We got out of privately owned data centers or servers under somebody's desk or in a cupboard in the office. But right now, cloud computing is responsible for around 200 to 250 million tons of CO2 emissions every year. So it's growing at an alarming rate, especially with now the adoption of AI and the need for compute power for that, processing power for that. What's even more alarming is water consumption, which is, for a finite resource in a lot of places. So there's a fantastic article here from the ABC, the Australian publication here, which talks about the Greater Western Sydney data centres. And there's a proposal in place for 19 new data centres, which would be 20 gigalitres of water per year, which is actually 4% of Melbourne's water supply, or the equivalent of 330,000 households in 2024. So this is just the net new proposition here, but you can see where there's a massive demand for water for the cooling in these data centers. And water is a scarce resource to begin with. So by making decisions around cloud computing in IT, we can actually have a positive impact on reducing the amount of water that's being consumed as well. Now, one of the other key things, and it's something when I was researching through, this is some of the graphs from a website called Electricity Maps, and it looks at the types of electricity or how electricity is being produced within each of the states. And this is key for us because where you select your Azure and AWS regions will matter in terms of the sustainable footprint within those environments. Now, if I look at, for example, here, 5 p.m. yesterday, so just grabbed the data from yesterday as we're doing the planning for this, but you can see here that New South Wales has a slight tinge of yellow, a bit of a mustard yellow there, but now 241 grams of carbon emission. Victoria is a little bit worse. So in that instance, it's quite easy to imply at that point in time at the day, it's probably more carbon efficient to put that workload and resource in New South Wales. There's only data centres in New South Wales, Victoria, and Canberra. In Australia, New Zealand has theirs as well. New Zealand's all green, so it'd be a fantastic place to host those workloads. But the time of day also matters as well. So when you start to look at the right side here, because of the way that the energy is produced, there's a significant uptick as well in the carbon emissions as a result of that. So at 2 a.m., I wasn't up to take the screenshot, but 2 a.m., you can see here there's less solar being produced, therefore more coal has been produced to use that energy in the data center. So what that looks like as an overlay, and it's an interesting to look at where and when the workload is running. So overnight for a lot of the states, particularly in Australia, it's very coal-based because we're very reliant on either wind or solar energy, as you can see on the bottom image there. So this is where it matters. We start looking at power scheduling and cycling off workloads overnight. It has the byproduct of cost, but also reducing your carbon emissions as a result of that. Now, the way that Flexera tackles this, and this is the approach that we take across each of these areas, we also focus on the different scopes. So if I look at my scope 1, which is direct emissions from things the company owns, scope 2, the indirect emissions for generation of purchase energy, so electricity, steam, heating, those sorts of things. Scope 3, usually all other indirect emissions, so typically around the supply chain up and downstream, the disposal as well of physical assets. So each of the 4 use cases in front of you also bring in those metrics. There's a consistency in how we're reporting around our carbon footprint, the sustainability posture here. The first one around cloud sustainability. So what we've done is a fantastic partnership with GreenPixie. This is something that we'll talk a little bit more about as well, but this allows us to look at data sources such as your AWS, Azure, GCP bills, and compare that with a fantastic data set from GreenPixie, which is the ISO certified calculations across electricity, carbon emissions, and water. And we can look at then what the impact of making decisions around cloud cost and spend has on your carbon impact as well. In terms of our server and data center space, we use ITAM visibility to do that with we go through our fantastic data intelligence team, go through and research the manufacturers provided hardware levels, things like Energy Star and other rankings, and gives us a view of what are the cost of the servers across those 3 scopes as well. End user compute devices in the third there, so what is the consumption across all endpoints out there in the environment. And as well as, because IT visibility has that broad capability to bring in more assets, we can also look at things like network devices and other data sources to bring those in. Our goal here is to drive towards more value-based recommendations. So we want to get each of these areas covered, get the visibility on what's out there, match that with the industry-leading sources of carbon sustainability information like GreenPixie, and to bring that up to the forefront in your decision-making processes around sustainability. Now, the way that we do that in the back end is exactly like is shown on the screen in front of you. Slightly busy slide, but we'll go through that right now. So what we do in terms of our cloud cost optimization solution, which is the subset there is the cloud sustainability, we're actually going through and reading a number of different details on the bill and bringing that into our platform, so the Flexera One platform. What we do is we use a subset of that information to compare that with GreenPixie, and that's what allows us to perform those carbon calculations. What we then do is present that in a view in cloud sustainability, which we'll see in a second, which gives us a really good view in terms of the carbon emissions. Likewise, on the IT visibility side, we keep a record, a database of the different calculations. You can see here today that we have on the top what that looks like in CCO, on the bottom in IT visibility. So our goals and what we're planning for next year is to take that to the next level. I know Mark from the product team is super passionate about getting this end-to-end carbon dashboard, the combination of all of these great data points together and getting that in your hands as well to give a complete view of carbon emissions and sustainability scoring next year. On the top here as well, we're looking at ways we can add value to that chain. So whether that's carbon allocation, budgeting, forecasting, we want to bring this into the forefront of not just what we can see what's out there, but also provide insights and capabilities to plan ahead for the future to make those sustainable decisions. This is a fantastic view, a graph just showing you the differences here of where us, Flexera, with GreenPixie, cover each of these different areas. Now, the one I wanted to point out here was mainly looking at the sustainability side from up to hourly for some of the providers. But the key here for us is we're getting data in. Yesterday's carbon is in today's dashboard, which is unique to us. The process that and how we correlate all of that data with GreenPixie is fully automated. So we're not expecting our customers to go through and manually match those cloud resources. We're doing that on a nightly basis, get that into the platform for you. You don't have to wait 3 months, 6 weeks, or monthly for the different cloud providers to get up to date. We're doing that for you as our customers. And in terms of the FinOps and GreenOps, this is the overlay here where we start to look primarily at, what are the different FinOps phases? How does that overlap with our intent to go into looking at GreenOps as an intersecting discipline to FinOps here? So under Inform, we really want to get providing the visibility in the cloud resource usage, cost, and then matching the carbon footprint. When we look at Optimize, you want to optimize the resource waste, but then that also helps lower our carbon emissions. Now, if I look at Operate, what are the governance and policies in the organization around this? Do we need to reconsider, reevaluate what we're doing as an organization to have maybe a slight hit sometimes on cost to look at more, carbon, reducing carbon as the imperative rather than just cost? So a fantastic graph here showing the overlap, the differences. We want to ensure that with FinOps, GreenOps is just as important, has a significant impact. And there's no better way to demonstrate that impact than to show this. So on the left-hand side here, this is what Flexera can provide in terms of recommendations. So when we're looking at right-sizing those compute EC2 instances, we're doing a particular saving for that. If I'm going from this instance type to a smaller one, there is a cost saving per month. But the byproduct of that on the right is that GreenPixie intelligence around reducing carbon, water, and electricity. So if we can do that, and maybe the balance of cost and carbon is equally as important here to drive that out of the business. So just always, we just want to cover off a fantastic case study with ABB. They did a whole bunch of great work with IT visibility and particularly around what they were able to do in terms of their IT governance, reducing their environmental footprint, and meeting their emerging ESG reporting requirements. So they selected Flexera to help them drive that, and that's why part of that reason why they were the recipients for the Technology for Good category, helping drive sustainability as an IT imperative to prove that IT is also green. So what I want to do now is we'll jump into the platform and have a look around. So as always, we're going to go through 1 second. We always get a fantastic timeout in the login. All right, so and here it comes. So there's two particular areas today. Like I said, there's some fantastic plans looking into next year and beyond around getting better, more views and more rational views within the platform. But where we start today is just want to briefly touch on where we look at IT visibility on the hardware side. Now, this is where I mentioned around the EUC data center network devices. What we can do here is we bring all of that information in with the research the data intelligence team do, provides an overlay of sustainability information. We look at the scope 1, 2, and 3, and overlay that to the hardware that's out there. And this is data center, it's network devices, storage devices, anything where the manufacturer has a reported carbon emission detail. Just wait for that to load. Always when I'm doing a live demo, this will happen. The goal for us is looking at some of the metrics as well. So if I look at PUE, so our power usage effectiveness, the closer we can get that to 1, the more efficient those particular endpoints are. And we'll start to look at the other metrics that we'll see in a second around energy efficiency. So there is the ratings around gold, silver, platinum and bronze within the energy efficiency ratings. And these look at, it's particularly around guaranteed minimum efficiencies from what we get from the wall, from the output and the loss. So when we start to look at those energy efficiency ratings here is my golds, my platinums have less loss in terms of energy required to produce those machines. So the higher the ranking, the better use of electricity. So for example, a gold rated piece of hardware has 100 watts from the wall, 90 watt output, and there's only a 10 watt loss. So we can see there that machine is using energy the most efficient way possible. Now we look at the top here in terms of the different areas of scope 1, 2, and 3 again, which is consistent metric across the platform. I want to ensure that getting my average device PUE down to as close to 1 as possible here, and my average green score as well as high as possible. So up to 20 there being better. I can also break it down by the different categories of hardware. So, the carbon emissions for the computers, my network equipment, I want to see that by the subcategories. So in this case, mainframes are significantly more carbon producing than, say, servers. But also we overlay that rich IT visibility data. So if I want to look at my obsolete machines here, I can see and drill into what are the obsolete machines, what's the carbon footprint of those, what are the exact devices. So if I went through and looked at each of those obsolete machines, what's my total CO2 emissions, so the carbon dioxide equivalent here, which is all gases, water, electricity, or gases in this case, just for this side, but 61,000. So I have the potential here to replace those with more carbon efficient, in this case, network devices, to get a better outcome and more green outcome. If I look at my carbon footprint, what I'm doing here is looking at exactly where that exists within my environment. So just get some details in terms of the different manufacturers. In this case here, it's IBM, and they might be driving different models here, so the MO4s. I can then also overlay the currency information once again. So is the flat panels and smartphones, and is this hardware current? So when I'm making decisions on replacing hardware in the environment, in this case here, 100% of those phones, it's just one in this case, or 100% down here of the Cisco kit, we've got 3 of those are obsolete. So I need to make a decision to replace those. The location carbon footprint gives me a view across both the cost centers, business units, and locations around the world. So in this case here, there's a big blip around Indiana, and I know there's a small blip here in Chicago. So where are the most carbon producing endpoints within a map? So if I'm a global multinational company, I can then balance that across the organization, look at that breakdown by cost center, breakdown by business unit as well. Now, when I look at my sustainability view here, this is where I have, and I just was hovering over the cloud. So it's better cloud cost optimization. This is where you'll get those recommendations around spend. But 2 down here is my sustainability. So this is where I really want to look at that integration that we have with GreenPixie. So we're presenting the outcome of this data automation that we have to present the outcome of that view. So once again, we're looking at the combination of those scopes. So scope 1 and 2 have been put together here for those direct and indirect emissions, and also my typical supply chain up and down in my scope 3. I can see what my unblended cost is for the assets in scope. I can see over this time period as well from my selected date range, details about water consumption increase, my electricity consumption is increasing. And this is where we start to get back to the Western Melbourne water use case here around, what X number of gigaliters per year that will be consumed by those extra data centers is I can have an immediate impact on that now. So if I look at all the areas, globally, I may want to drill into how does that profile across Australia look like. In this case here, my New South Wales data centre is generating the most emissions for those footprints here, looking at what's in Canberra and also down in Victoria. So I get a view of what areas, and especially in APAC, what areas are driving those carbon emissions. The goal here is really to drive and have a material impact on these graphs. So what I want to see, it could be that we want to maintain a flat cost, but how can I make decisions to drive the blue line down? So if this is flat and my carbon is reducing, that's a fantastic outcome in terms of being more sustainable and about the choices that we're making. What we also see is some of the inverse of that. So we've made decisions that have actually kept my cost neutral, but actually my carbon emissions have increased. So there's probably decisions made here in terms of the profiles of machines that were required that meant there's an increase in carbon emission. But then I can also see in subsequent days, there was action taken to drive that down. So what I can do on a daily basis is actually see what those decisions have had a material impact or not on my carbon, but also my cost. I can also see that split down by the different providers, so AWS, Azure, and GCP. Now, the goal here, if I go back up the top, is I can also drill into a specific cloud provider and get a lens on just that particular public cloud provider. Now, in this case here, I've selected Azure. I can see my emissions by subcategory. What are the most energy producing areas of my Azure sort of commitments. If AI was here, we looked at the GPU scale, and this is the trend that we're seeing now. I would expect my GPU commitments and the processing there to increase rapidly as well, but at the moment, it's not in the top 3 in this particular chart. Now, if I want to get into the detail as well, and I think the detail is sometimes important to see what decisions are actually being made. And this is where I can see the level of detail required. So the difference as well with the cloud sustainability, it looks at the actual usage based on when things are actually live and turned on. Because we can see what's actually been used, whether that's in gigabytes, whether that's in time, compute, etc. I can then equate that to emissions, electricity consumption, water consumption, and cost. So I can get into the detail here. And as you can see here, this is not just on compute, it's on the NAT gateways, the data transfers. There's a cost associated to every type of data. So it's incredibly important that we have a holistic view here. And the combination of us bringing that data in through cloud cost optimization and the relationship that we have with GreenPixie allows us to get this into the hands of our customers to help drive and make more sensible and more green decisions. All right, so I just want to pivot back here for 1 second. So appreciate everyone jumping on today. Hopefully that you have learned something new. I certainly did through the research that we went through to get to this webinar today in terms of that fantastic article through the ABC, some of the electricity map details as well. Look, if you want to reach out, learn more about what we're doing around the sustainability pace. Just a question that's come through. So yes, are these reports and tracking in line with global compliance requirements and will be accepted by assessment and audit agencies? So there was some detail around one of the slides. We did skip over it, but when you do look at the recording again, I'll go back 1 second. So the current ISO 14064 GHG verified method, it's a mouthful, but that is the current standard that we're working towards. So with these, they're verified, and as you can see here, the comment is the most current certification in the market as of March 24. So we're aligning with that. So hopefully that answered the question there. All right, if there's no further questions, look, please feel free to reach out. More than happy to discuss further about what we're doing in this space. If you've got a cloud sustainability challenge today and you want to get into the weeds a little bit more and understand how we can help you, this is just a link to my LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out and connect with us. Thanks, everybody.